what's going on, everybody? It's your boy Spencer. Doing something a little bit different today, but something that I've been tapped into more than I have since college, and that is WWE. So, I'm talking WWE. I got to have Kevin on.
What up? It's ironic because the last time you were like super tapped into wrestling was like one of the worst eras of wrestling, especially at least on the WWE side.
Yeah, Ronda Rousey. That was the year I was like the most tapped in.
Yeah, they were putting out some doo doo during that time.
It was fun though,
It
but
was fun. Wrestling is inherently fun, so it's like it's like pizza. Even when it's bad, it's still kind of fun to watch.
and I've realized this and what my favorite parts about WWE are. And it's not necessarily like what goes on in the ring. It's fun. It's like crazy what they do.
That's only part of it, man.
Yeah, that's not, and I don't even necessarily care about the literal storylines that they're putting out there. My main interest in WWE is learning how much of it is real, which I guess is probably the draw for a lot of people. But what I'm trying to say is like I'm not like, oh, you can't do that to Seth Rollins. Like, you know what I mean? I'm just what's going on behind the stage, like with these producers or
Well,
like this thing.
the best parts of wrestling are when that stuff bleeds into the actual storylines. And so like when the line gets blurred and you don't exactly know when the fiction ends and like the real life kind of politics of wrestling start, that's kind of when it's at its best.
And I think that's what's happened. I think, okay, well, first of all, I have to ask you this because I don't really know the real answer to it. But like back in the day when they were doing the Monday Night Wars or whatever it was called, like how mainstream was wrestling? Is it like it is now?
Okay. So think about like the way everyone kind of understands what's going on with the world is through the internet now, right? And so back in the day, back in the late 90s, the way people kind of came to a common understanding about what was happening in the world was by watching television. And Monday Night Raw and WCW Nitro were two of the highest rated television shows like on a weekly basis for several years. So when you are at like the upper echelons of one of the most prominent communication medium for humans at the time, it was very culturally relevant just because everyone was watching TV, and it's like it's hard to recreate that kind of thing now because the internet is so everyone has their own little niche and everything can kind of pop off and go viral, but like the internet at large is still ignorant to it, and there are only like a few world shaking events that can get everybody on the planet talking or everybody in the United States talking. But wrestling was one of those things during the Attitude Era, during the Monday Night Wars. Like it was one of the most cultural, like it was probably, you can debate it between then and right now. Wrestling was the most culturally relevant it ever was during the Monday Night War.
Okay, that's what I thought. So this all brings me to the reason why I wanted to make this video. But like when The Rock joined very recently and he jumped in, like that first night, especially when The Rock jumped on the mic, like that, I feel like that was the most culturally relevant wrestling has been in like years and years. Like, would you agree with me on that? It hit main stage. I feel like everybody was talking about it for a night.
Yeah, because post Attitude Era, usually the only time people talk about WWE is when like something really bad happens. Like there's some kind of controversy, somebody dies, like there's a scandal. Like only bad stuff gets WWE in the airwaves outside of its like own media ecosystem. But like this was one of the most recent incidents that it wasn't exactly intentional, where it's like people are talking about WWE outside of the normal ecosystem because the product is so good, or like they're killing a storyline or whatever. It was because they had kind of misjudged the situation for the main event of WrestleMania, because you have it was kind of a perfect storm of things, just because you have WrestleMania. Regardless every year of how like culturally relevant wrestling is, WrestleMania still kind of eeps into the mainstream just because it is the biggest event of like a institution of American entertainment. And there's already additional eyes on wrestling as a product during WrestleMania season, but this entire thing with Vince McMahon and the lawsuit that's going on against him, and the fact that WWE just sold their media rights to Netflix, there were like multiple titanic shifts happening on the WWE side while they entered this season of the year where additional eyes are on them. So everything kind of created a perfect storm for a lot of attention to be placed on what they're doing, especially in the main event, and that has a lot to do with what The Rock did.
So yes, that is the main subject of today is The Rock. Now, I would like, and we're never going to know the real answer to this, but I want to give out some theories as to just kind of guess how all of this transpired. So the whole thing, right, that really blew this whole thing up is like everyone felt like that the working class man in Cody Rhodes was being screwed by like upper management, right? Kind of like a
Definitely.
storyline that I think everybody can relate to. And I
It's one
think
they've
at this
used before.
point, yeah, at this point, it's pretty obvious that The Rock is like, okay, well, I see a shift here. Now, I'm gonna go ahead and say that he didn't see this coming at all. This is my running theory, in that he thought I'm just gonna walk in. This is gonna be a big storyline between me, and Roman Reigns. But now I think he never realized how big Cody Rhodes was. Like that's part of it now, right? That's his whole thing is like I'm going to screw over Cody Rhodes. Like I'm the big guy here. I'm
Right.
going kind of heel. I don't think that was the original direction that any of this was supposed to go in. And I have even one more theory on top of this that really like is a crazy set of events to set this in motion. I don't think Cody Rhodes was supposed to win the Royal Rumble. But I think that the Punk knew that something went horribly wrong, like an injury where he's like, dude, like I can't win this because
Yep.
I'm not going to be able to do anything with that. Maybe you can say they said Cody Rhodes is going to win all along, but knowing that The Rock was coming, I feel fairly confident that Cody Rhodes was not supposed to win the Royal Rumble, and then The Rock was just supposed to come in, right? And then you can have Seth Rollins versus CM Punk, and everything fits into place. I think Cody Rhodes winning like really changed everything, but I do believe that The Rock thought, okay, regardless, the Royal Rumble doesn't go exactly how we planned. We'll just have him fight Seth Rollins, and I'll step in. And then the lashback happened, and I just don't think The Rock was aware of like Cody Rhodes in the slightest bit in this equation. And I think that has made a very interesting situation that they've had to change a lot of things for.
I do think it's part of one of the unique quirks about wrestling, especially in the internet age, is that you can really trace back all of the like domino effects and where like a key moment happened where the paths that you could go down were diverged, and you go down one path instead of another. And I think it starts with Cody Rhodes winning the Royal Rumble, because I agree. I do think walking into the building that night, the initial plan is probably for CM Punk to win the Royal Rumble. And there's footage. If you kind of go back to all of the tweets that were happening that night, there's video of fans who are ringside of Punk. Like I believe he gets injured taking a move from Drew McIntyre at some point, like shortly after entering the Royal Rumble, and he tears his tricep. And there's footage of him like sitting in the corner while the Rumble is going on, talking to the refs and like mouthing the word tricep. So I think it's very clear. Like I think it's clear enough to establish that Punk worked the ending of that match with a torn tricep, which is an insane thing to do because he was picking Cody Rhodes up and putting him on his shoulders, all while his tricep meat was hanging in his arm. And
Which is nuts.
Yeah, just anyone who kind of disrespects wrestling, knowing that that's kind of the stuff that's expected of you when the pressure is highest, it's ridiculous. But that's an aside. Cody Rhodes ends up winning the Royal Rumble, and the path for Cody Rhodes at that point is very clear. We did this last year. Everyone thought it was the time for Roman Reigns to lose the WWE Championship, and it ended up not being the time. So we ran it back. Cody is somehow even bigger now than he was at that point last year. And it all seems very obvious where we're headed. And it's all something that people have been kind of clamoring for. I think they very purposefully kind of portrayed Roman Reigns in this sense of this guy who's never showing up. He's never defending the title. Meanwhile, the guy that he is kind of on a collision course with, has been there every single week, has been carrying the company, and has kind of like elevated himself and the product that WWE is putting out on a weekly basis to such a degree where everyone wants it to be Cody Rhodes, and Cody Rhodes specifically to be the one who takes the title off of Roman Reigns. And that's where these other elements get introduced. The things like the Vince McMahon scandal, The Rock securing a spot on the parent company of WWE, TKO. He secures a spot on their board of directors, and all while they are negotiating a massive, massive media rights deal with Netflix to take one of the most storied television programs in history and putting it on a streaming service. And when you introduce The Rock to a situation like that, you have this very unique scenario because everybody understands how busy The Rock is. There's not, I think, a place where you can go where The Rock's presence isn't felt in some capacity, whether it's in entertainment, whether it's in consumer goods, or whether it's in fucking pro sports. And I agree with you in the sense that there's no way a guy like that who has so much going on, who has so much to work on, he's not tapped into the weekly product of WWE. He doesn't know that Cody Rhodes has been the one who's actually been carrying the product for the past 2 years, ever since he came back. He just knows that Roman Reigns, his cousin, is on one of the most legendary title runs ever. And it only makes sense in his mind for like the culmination of that title run to be up against one of the greatest wrestlers of all time in The Rock. And so I think his thought when he enters this situation is, yeah, like this is the match. This is the money match. This is the match that everybody wants to see. Not knowing that, if he had been tapped in with the product on a weekly basis, would have understood that Cody was the one that everybody was behind, even if he didn't have a title. Like, his character work has just been through the roof. He's been having great matches. He's over with all of the fans. And yeah, it was kind of just like a perfect storm to rile up the fans to a degree that we haven't seen in like a decade around WrestleMania.
Feels like his name's Daniel Bryan, right?
Yes, Daniel Bryan was kind of like, it's giving a lot of like shades of that era of wrestling, to where it's like there's very clearly an established plan that creative wants to move forward with. And I do think that was the plan. I do think it was the plan for kind of Cody Rhodes to get the short end of the stick around this time, WrestleMania this year, because we had The Rock. And I think just the fact that they thought, probably like in the face of this Vince McMahon controversy, like this is the match that kind of can draw the most attention away from it. I do think that was part of like the plan, honestly, in that like, okay, we've got a lot of negative attention on us at a very critical point in the business, and we need something that can kind of like reaffirm our commitment to the product. And I think the idea of that was, yeah, let's do Roman Reigns versus The Rock.
So where do they go from here? I know they're like setting up a tag team match. This just all seems insane, and I'm not even really sure if they know how they want this to play out just quite yet.
Yeah, it's interesting because they set out with these plans. Obviously, the plan is for Roman Reigns to fight The Rock for the title, and the way that everything goes, you get such strong fan backlash. You get mainstream media attention for how upset the fans are at what the proposed creative plans are, and you now find yourself, I think, with more options than you know what to do with, because now Seth Rollins is involved in a capacity that I'm not sure anyone is like really kind of sure on how it all shake out. It does feel like they're building to some kind of tag team match, which personally, like the idea of like a tag team match when, I mean, for me, it really sucked when CM Punk got hurt. And I think that was a really key like butterfly effect moment in this entire saga, because I think we're able to kind of have our main event picture for WrestleMania be a lot clearer if we know that CM Punk is going to challenge Seth Rollins for the World Heavyweight Championship. And you can kind of, when this kind of started to happen, where I was like, oh, the fans are not going to let this happen. They're not going to let Cody Rhodes just get shafted like this. They're going to try and fight for a way to for him to be involved in the WWE title picture at WrestleMania. And for that, it always seemed like a triple threat between The Rock, Roman Reigns, and Cody Rhodes was like the way to go. But now it kind of seems like it does feel like we're kind of building towards like a night one tag team match between The Rock and Roman Reigns versus Cody Rhodes and Seth Rollins, and then a night two match of Cody Rhodes versus Roman Reigns.
But how does that
Like,
play out? How do they make that happen?
I don't know, because you still have the Elimination Chamber later this month, and the winner of the Elimination Chamber is also going to challenge Seth Rollins for the world title at WrestleMania. So I'm like, for me, the biggest hump that you get over is like you've kind of sold this as Seth Rollins will be involved in some capacity with Cody Rhodes trying to win the title, winning the WWE Championship.
And you do a day one like fatal four and the top two, like I don't know how you do it, man.
Well, it's interesting because both Seth and Roman are like the top champions in the company. They're both the heavyweight champions on their respective shows. So it's like you still have to give credence to that. You still have to find someone for Seth to wrestle for his championship. And so for that reason, I don't think a tag team is the best way to go about it. I do like the idea of, I don't know, like Seth came out on Raw this past Monday and essentially, offered himself up as a mercenary to Cody in a, kind of like a Shield callback. And the way I kind of see that like playing out ideally is because I want The Rock in this match. Like when it first got announced, I was a proponent of like Rock versus Roman is the match I think I'd rather see than Cody versus Roman. I really like Cody Rhodes, but like that was a match that I had thought Rock versus Roman would be absolute money, in the midst of this massive title reign that he's had.
How about a fatal four-way and the belt is just hanging from the ceiling?
See, that's just a tables, ladders, and chairs match, but like that feels really complicated just because it's like, what are you having Seth do in that situation? Does Seth not have an incentive to try and win both the titles in that case?
Well, maybe that makes it more interesting where he says he's going to help him, and then as like Cody like goes to like maybe finish things off, like he pushes the ladder over even though he's supposed to help him.
That's why that's why I think it's tricky, because before the Royal Rumble, the road to WrestleMania seemed very clear. CM Punk takes on Seth Rollins, like they had clearly started to tease that at multiple points before the Royal Rumble since Punk came back to WWE. And you had kind of we didn't really know The Rock was coming back at that point in time. So you had Cody kind of like still very much in the mix to defeat Roman at WrestleMania for the title. He still seems like the most worthy guy to beat Roman at this point in time. And after the Royal Rumble, everything just feels so much muddier. It feels like there's so many different directions that they can go in. I don't know. For me personally, I think I'd rather just see like Seth defends the title on Mania Night 1 against what I assume is going to be Drew McIntyre. Drew McIntyre has been crushing it lately, and I think he deserves to finally get a win in the main event of WrestleMania and beat Seth Rollins for the title. And I think night 2, it's like Seth Rollins has lost the title. He's kind of got like nothing to lose, and he wants to kind of just drag Roman down with him. And I think that kind of manifests itself. What I see is a triple threat match still between Cody, The Rock, and Roman Reigns. And Seth Rollins is kind of like being an enforcer on Cody Rhodes' behalf, trying to make sure that nobody's like interfering with the match.
Well, yeah, and a whole other element of this is like the whole family thing that's been going on forever. It's kind of lost its footing a little bit, but if he's going to lose the title, like that has to be an element of the match on some level.
And that's why I was such a big proponent of the Rock versus Roman match, because the Bloodline storyline has been the strongest thing consistently that WWE has been doing for literally 4 years now. Like, it's obviously cooled off from its height, but I do still think it's the most compelling, like, ongoing story that we have in all of wrestling, honestly. And to see those kind of like, obviously the two dudes at the top of that family, it's a Samoan wrestling dynasty, and obviously the two guys at the top are going to be The Rock and the guy who has the third longest title reign in WWE history. And so those dynamics, I feel like they need to be able to play out in order for this if we are truly on the path to Roman Reigns losing the title, those dynamics have to play out in their entirety. And I think it's kind of like some Avengers Infinity War, Avengers Endgame kind of duality going on here. Last year you have, the good guy taking a huge loss, and I think around this time, like this time around, you have like everyone who the bloodline has kind of crossed on this path to this title reign, kind of coming out of the woodwork, and like really like the consequences all falling down on both The Rock and Roman Reigns. And then obviously this ends best possible scenario is Cody is the champion at the end of it. I think as long as we get there, people are gonna I don't think people are gonna care too much about how we get there. But I would like some respect for the Bloodline storyline because it has carried the company for 4 years pretty much. It's carried them into this new media rights deal. Like, it's been the best stuff that they have had going. In addition to, because Cody Rhodes has played a part in that storyline as well. And so in that vein, I think it has been the storyline that has yielded the most success for WWE. And I think they got to be able to stick the landing on it. They got to be able to give it the respect that it is earned in over the years. And I think it's really important for me personally to have those dynamics play out while we get to the desired destination that everybody wants of Cody becoming the champion finally.
Yeah, I think that is something that we can both agree on, and that this is the most compelling that WWE has been forever. Like, I can't think of the last time where it was like this exciting for something that I just don't regularly watch. But I'm tapped in. Like, I watch all the clips after it happens. I may not necessarily watch it live. I will be watching WrestleMania for sure. And that's just not something I felt. And I think it's pretty cool and something I wanted to talk about today.
Yeah, it definitely just feels like something that it's a larger conversation about the impact that professional wrestling has had on our culture, just because it's one of the last bastions outside of sports, like traditional sports. It's one of the last bastions of live entertainment on television, and being able to kind of experience something at the same time as everybody else and kind of seeing a story play out live in front of thousands of people. There's something unique about that. And I think WWE for a long time has kind of run unopposed as far as competition. And with more wrestling being more easily accessible, more alternative options for people to watch wrestling being more accessible to people, it's really forced them to kind of up their game a little bit. And I think for the past 4 years, you've seen them try to build stories that recapture the essence of what makes pro wrestling good and interesting. And now it's at such a fever pitch where they've been consistently executing on these storylines and these programs and bringing in the top talent when they're available, that it feels like WrestleMania is a big kind of showcase for wrestling to kind of re-enter the mainstream, re-enter the lexicon of pop culture once again. It's a really exciting time.
But if they mess this up, I think it
sets them back several years. I do think it sets them back several years because the Bloodline storyline has made a lot of guys. It's elevated a lot of guys who you never would have thought would find themselves in the main event title scene of WWE, and a lot of those guys have been able to kind of get a rub and elevate themselves in a way that they wouldn't have been able to before. And again, this story has yielded so much good business for WWE that you don't want to see it turn into something like the NWO. We started this talking about the Attitude Era. The reason that WCW ended up losing is because I don't think they could have they knew when to end the thing that was kind of providing them with the most benefit as far as their on-screen product. The NWO was really drawn out, and it died a very slow, painful death. And I think the Bloodline storyline needs to go out with a huge bang.
But I'm excited, and maybe we'll make another video after WrestleMania. But that was something I wanted to
review.
Yes, something I wanted to talk on the podcast today. Do you have any closing thoughts?
I see where all of this stuff is going, but it still doesn't change the fact that in my heart of hearts, Roman Reigns is my forever champion. And I think it will be a crime when he eventually loses the title, because I think he's been so good. I've always liked Roman Reigns, but he took it to an absolute new stratosphere the last few years, and has really solidified himself as one of the greatest to ever do it. I don't care what anyone has to say about how often he works. Roman Reigns is one of the greatest of all time, in my opinion.
Kind of hard to argue at this point. Seeing like just when he comes out, man, just everyone seems to hate him or whatever.
He's got the aura, dude.
Point, but yeah, like the reaction just anytime he's seen is absolutely insane.
You go on Twitter. You think everyone hates Roman Reigns and doesn't want him to, like, they want him to go away forever. But the minute his music hits, when he's in the arena, every fucking person in the arena has their ones in the air. Like everyone pops. Like he is the marquee attraction in the entire industry. So,
and I think that's the barometer, man. I think that's the real barometer for how people are feeling.
Put some respect on Roman Reigns.
All right. Well, that's going to do it for today, and we'll see you guys next time.